happy 2025. I have to start by saying that I found my happy place on New Year's Eve at the St. Vincent's Wound Clinic. I know that's a little hard to believe, but I went there to register. My podiatrist, who is at UMS, found that this was the fastest wound clinic that they could get me into, and surprise, it's probably the best for me. So in the reception area, I met friends who had known Budge, Ray, and BB, and they alerted me to meeting the big man in the wound clinic.
You're older, but you're not as big.
I'm not as big. I'm 4 months older than him. I was in the grade above him, but he was always in my advanced classes.
So do you have any idea how much bigger he is?
Well, I'll tell you, we went to Hendrix together, and I feel like I advanced his career because I kept him away from the keg. See, I was on the inner circle.
Yeah.
Kept him back. And now 50 years later, I'm his nurse. You know how they tell you, be nice to the really smart ones because you might work for them one day? Yeah. Damn, man.
Okay. Well,
here I am.
Okay. Thanks.
The big man.
I used to be a heart surgeon here.
You used to be a heart surgeon?
And I got sick. It was either go out on disability or continue to work over here. Because when you go from 100 hours a week on call every night to this, with all the good help that's over here, life gets a lot easier.
You look like a mountain man, so I think you probably...
I am kind of. I let my hair grow out after my divorce.
Oh, is that what it was?
Mm-hmm.
Seemed like the thing to do.
Yeah.
It is.
You look like you know what you're doing anyway.
I went down to Little Missouri with the Ozarks Society on a Sunday, and I was not the one with the longest hair.
Really?
You did that this Sunday?
Huh. We took, Woodrow had a Air Super Puma, my brother had one, and I had one, all with rolling frames. So we rode it. And then Marcel, who had the longest hair, the senior guy there, was in a whitewater canoe, as was Andy from Russellville. Andy's a physician up there. Where are you from?
I'm from Harrison, but I live here in Little Rock. I live out in Chenal Village, Chenal now.
Well,
Yeah, so.
my best friend in med school was from Harrison. He was actually from Valley Springs.
Oh, I graduated Valley Springs.
Then you know Kenny Collins.
Kenny Collins?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, I know all kinds of story about Kenny Collins and his wife Melissa and
Yeah.
his brother. Now, did you?
I used to go fishing with Kenny.
Did you?
He was a wealth of information on fishing.
Well, he's a hunter, fisherman, and he's in his environment up there because that's where he grew up. And he's got brothers, and he's got one sister that, she's in insurance now. But yeah, the Collins family's dad was a good. Well, he's still alive, and mother, and he was principal at Valley.
Was Church of Christ, played basketball at Harding.
Yeah.
And he's just the best, the absolute best guy.
Yeah.
When he found out that I had boats and canoes, we became fabulous friends.
Well,
works that way.
Have you been hunting with him, or you just fish?
Just fishing.
Just fishing. Well, yeah, he's got a dog worth thousands, I'd say. It goes, and I think maybe his son. They do some duck hunting. I don't know. His son does anyway. I don't know.
I've kind of lost track. I hadn't kept up with him, but he was just such a good guy.
Yeah, well.
And like me, he went home. I'm from North Little Rock, so I went 3 blocks back over. And
well, Kenny, he's an elder at the church there, and I was at Harrison, and of course I worshiped there in Northside, but we moved down here in February, and my son's here, and I have Parkinson's. My wife has ovarian cancer, and I have a daughter with birth defects, so we're not we're still pretty independent, but being here next to a son that lives here and a daughter-in-law has made it much easier, and it's nice that we can come over here. My history with St. Vincent's is kind of odd. That one day, and it's been a long time ago, I had an issue. I think it was really maybe on an anniversary, and I don't know if it was drinking wine or what, but I had this thing where I had a heart issue, and the doctors up there didn't know what to do, and so they put me on an ambulance and they sent me down here, and I came to St. Vincent's, and I got really good treatment, but they did that catheterization, and they said, you're not ever going to die of a heart attack. Of course, I've had everything else, but the guy that was the doctor, I believe it was A.J. Thompson.
Yeah.
Thompson.
His office was in this building.
Is it? Was it?
Well, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I know he passed, but by him saying that, it always comes to my mind that because it wasn't a whole lot longer that at a young age he died of cancer. So you never know. But
You just never know.
Yeah, but no, I
Do your best.
do your best, and so I appreciate you.
Now conversation switches to Dr. Ron Rivard, who is my cardiologist in Harrison.
Senior cardiology fellow, so he's about to graduate and go off into practice. And they had us down in these little rooms at Ed 2 going through these clinical case scenarios. And it was a guy coming in with angina and chest pain and how you worked it up and what you did from there. And of course, the cardiologist take him to the cath lab and shoot dye and then decide about stents and all. But we felt this patient needed surgery. We said, well, don't you think we should get a surgical consult with it this time? And Bard, he's my size, or he's a big
I know
guy.
yeah.
And he said, is there anything else you would like to do to evaluate or work up this patient before we call the Philistines? And that has stuck with me. I mean, that was 1986.
Got this message from Dr. James Bryan, whose dad is deceased, but his name is Jim Bryan, and his uncle is John Bryan. Afterwards, I wanted a long time for it to reflect on 2024. I went to the Faded Rose. There was a Faded Rose close to where I had an apartment when I was here, 2005 to 2012. So I'm familiar with their menu. So I decided to have a steak, sit there and look across and think of some of the friends I've lost this past year, particularly Bobby Wheeler and Bill Huber and more recently Richie Poe. One other thing I recall as I ate at the Faded Rose when I was a financial advisor, I had an experience there where Steve Stafford come up and said, are you Herb Lair? And I said, sure. And I really didn't remember him. Of course, he's been the CEO of Bank of Green Forest for years, and I know, his son-in-law, Brad King. But that was kind of an amazing remembrance of that happening. Times Square, New York. Of course, on Central Time, you get to do that 1 hour earlier. Picture was taken circa 1913 of my grandparents, Sam and Amanda Dees, along with their first child, Noel. They resided in Bellefonte area, and I'm sure the picture must have been taken in Harrison. Okay, their second child, Irene, was my mother. I was delivered in a house right next to this service station in 1944 by Dr. Ross Fowler. We began CUO, our computer utilities of the Ozarks, in the back of our Lair TV building, basically 5.5 miles south of Harrison, over a series. Introducing Finding Your Happy Place, the movie, for those who prefer a movie over a series. The primary purpose of my docuseries, Finding Your Happy Place, has been about use of artificial intelligence by people with disabilities, whether it's a person with birth defects or people who have disabilities because of Parkinson's at a later age. As you will see, there are a lot of events that can be changed, whether it's travel, whether it's attending special events. It could be sports events. It could be entertainment. And it could be just travel in general as far as all the issues that you might face. So I think that you'll find that that's the value of this series, and we try to use some self-deprecating humor at times, but it's a serious matter. It affects a lot of people, indirectly or directly, and it involves trillions of dollars. In fact, it's estimated to be about 13 trillion when you include the people themselves and families and friends involved. So I think it's a very interesting story that needs to be told.
The way you do it.
Dedicated to my rocksteady boxing friends who have become family.
Over the hills and far away, looking out for a better day. When it seems like there's no escape.
Give it 3 big rings to spread. There you go. Congratulations, Miss Diane.
Thank you.
We'll be seeing you for lab draws and whatnot, but
thank you.
the hard part's behind you.
The hard part's behind me. You did good. Thank you all so much. Yeah.
For about 50 to 60 years. And what it involves is stimulation at the level of the spinal cord. Basically, if we think about it in the way of traffic on the highway, there's a lot of traffic on the highway and only one signal can come up from the body to the brain. Often that's the pain signal. A spinal cord stimulator intercepts that signal and sends electricity to replace that pain signal that travels from the body to the brain. Hence the term neuromodulation, or modulating the nerve response. Folks who are candidates for spinal cord surgery.
I had similar issues as Bryce did on deciding what to do in my 2024 and 2025.
You know that I started my career in student ministry. And so I have this love-hate relationship with this particular Sunday sermon, because this was the Sunday that like from the bullpen, I was called out and it was like, Bryce, we need you to do the last sermon of the year. And that was the one that I normally got. It was like hot ones like Memorial Day, Labor Day weekend, and then this one was normally a Sunday that I would get the last Sunday of the year. Now, over the past few years when I've done it, I've struggled too with how do you present this sermon? Do you do like a purely reflective lesson of like, hey, this is what we did this year. These were the things that we accomplished. These are the things that we are proud of and excited about. Or do you just do completely a forward-focused sermon that says, this is where we're going based off of where we've been? If you know how my brain works, I decided to do a little bit of both by using 3, that's going to sound weird, topics together. So in just a little bit, we're going to talk
Finding Your Happy Place podcast. Well, there are not many happier places than to be a Razorback basketball fan. And going through a minister's office, it's kind of neat to see all the sports memorabilia and a little bit of switch from Kentucky to the Razorback. This podcast today is going to be outside your comfort zone. I want to do it a little different. I would like to be going over the exercise room, but I thought that's going to be too much of an effort to go over there. So I just thought I could do it here. We're in a kind of what is this called? This is what room is this called anyway?
It's a meeting hall at the Wortham Center. Yeah.
It's official then. This, of course, I have Bryce Kittinger here with me, and when you look it up, he's a worker at Chenal Valley Church. Do you ever go by pastor or preacher, or how do you handle that?
I think it's whatever people want to call me. I answer to whatever.
So hey dude
is fine.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah.
Mr. doesn't matter to me.
Okay, and you're married. You got Whitney as your wife, and a couple of kids, Judah and Isla, right?
Isla.
Yeah. Okay, I get it wrong. And what are their ages? I just want to.
Judah's 9 and Isla is 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about, and you can find this information out, that you're 38, I believe, and you're going to be 39 in November 11th?
37, going to be
38.
38.
So
is that all on the internet? All this stuff? Speaking of comfort zone, yeah. I didn't know all that was on there.
Yeah. I used to work for the CIA.
Okay.
I can go in, I can get everything that anybody wants to know about anybody. You get your birth date, your name.
Yeah, that's
you're
true.
You're lost. So.
Yeah.
But the real point there was that you're essentially half my age.
Okay.
And you probably, if you add 40 years to your age and then to the kids, you'd be kind of like my family, because I have a son, Craig, that here is an elder, and then my daughter Christy, who's a special person that.
If we could talk to the animals, just imagine it, chatting with a chimp and chimpanzee.
Sure. I know you're a director, and sometimes you hear the word zookeeper, and I wanted to make sure I understood the difference in what a director does at the zoo and what a zookeeper does, so that I kind of have an understanding of what your function there is. So.
Sure. So the executive director is, I guess what you would say is the head of the zoo. So I manage all the operations for the zoo and lead the function for the organization. We have several different divisions for the zoo. We have a division for facilities and operations, which is
running a technology company in the Ozarks. There's probably like a zookeeper with all the different personalities that you had within your business. So there's a little bit of a side joke here.
That's the largest division of the zoo, because it wouldn't be a zoo without the animals.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Then there was the eclipse, and it actually delivered more than I expected. I think you'll see as I position myself, I had an iPad, an iPhone, and it was kind of pretty much an amazing thing. Wow, getting really dark. Huh. I guess I didn't expect it to be this dark, and then all of a sudden it got dark. It is eerie. Oh, man. Crazy. Wow. That's something else. I guess I just didn't entirely expect to know what to expect. Another thing to remember is occasionally you see some light flashing up there, but that's basically coming from my iPad and the light it produces sometimes when it's recording. But it was really dark, and that's what I wanted to capture, and you can see that for the most part in the silhouette there. And I think that's what's really fascinating about the picture and maybe the profile. I think that's a more artistic than I expected to show how it looks from the side view.
I mean, did anybody ever say you look like Terry Bradshaw?
Video.
Now, you said that I look like who now?
Sorry?
Who do I look like?
Terry Bradshaw.
Terry Bradshaw. How do I look like Brad? Just because I don't have any hair? Or?
No, you got his dimple in your chin.
All right. Well, I just wanted to get somebody.
I got the laugh, and I said the only people who said that is people that were. Well, I got the dimple here.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
So he.
Well, I can see it.
Well, yeah.
You know, I'm from Kentucky, and in Kentucky, Hankins, especially Randy Hankins, that's country. So I've worked with a guy in Seattle who was very popular. He had a great name, Craig O'Neill. I'm going to give you that name. So that's how I got the name, which means, Herb, that for the last 54 years, there's been a guy from Seattle who's probably been in therapy.
I would think so. All right. So are you any? I know Jeff Hankins. Are you any?
Well, I'm often asked. Jeff and I are best buddies, and no, we're not related. We have tried to. Let me back up. I've tried to find a way we're related. He has pretty much distanced himself from the effort.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering about that because his son's getting married this weekend down in Dallas.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of my son and a lot of his friends are down there. So
wait a minute, Jeff Hankins' son's getting married?
Yeah, getting married. His son Luke.
Well, I never got an invite.
You didn't?
No.
Well,
and I knew this kid. He was brilliant with figures and math. He's a good mathematician.
I know, and he's working in Houston now, and he's in financial services stuff.
He should be.
Yeah, and he was on the quiz bowl, and my grandson was on the quiz bowl with him. So that's where another connection we had. But I know Jeff for a long time in his family. So yeah, I know they.
Sure, the invite got lost.
They got lost in the mail. I know my son and my daughter-in-law are on their way down here, and
I was in a good mood for this podcast till now.
Well, I hate to break that news to you.
Well, let's look on the bright side, because that's what you do with this podcast. I don't have to buy him a present.
Yeah, you know. Well, we'll see how it goes. But I'd say they're going to have a good weekend down there.
I met a fellow member of the Arkansas Academy of Computing at Conway, and Eddie Sly is a very interesting person who came to computing very different than I did. You'll get a big chuckle out of this.
In 1966, I was 22 years old, and I was working for Arkansas Power and Light Company, climbing highline poles for the construction group all over the state of Arkansas. So a lot of times I was on the road every week, and during that time I had a wife, I had a car payment even. I had two daughters and a house in Sheridan, Arkansas. And one of my daughters, my youngest daughter, Alicia, at that time got spinal meningitis, and it was meningococcal spinal meningitis, which was rare to get, but it's a killer. It was time for me to get off the road, and my wife at the time said that she needed help with these girls because they had been sick. So as I grew up over there, my folks owned the mercantile store in Prattsville, Arkansas, which is 8 miles from Sheridan. So I had been back and forth to the bank many times making deposits and things of that nature. And the bank belonged to the McCoy family. And I was in there one day, and you know, as any little country town, everybody knew my business before I even knew it. So Eddie McCoy was one of the McCoys that was the CEO of the bank, and he came up to me, and I was standing at a teller window, and he said, "Eddie, what are you going to do now? And I said, for what? And he said, what you going to work? Where are you going to go to work? And I said, I don't have anything. And he said, why don't you go to work for the bank? And I said, okay, what will I do? I'm not a banker. And he said, well, we're going to teach you that. So I went to work for the Grant County Bank at that time, and I started at the very bottom. I mean, I didn't sweep the floors, but they showed me where the broom closet was, I can tell you that. And so there was an older gentleman there named Coates A. Mitchell, and he was the old way of banking. I mean, you made and documented and you did everything right, or you didn't do it at all for Coates A. Mitchell. And he did not mind telling you that. So I started out working for Coates A. Mitchell, and then another man was there at that time that came from the FDIC, and he was a younger person, my age, and his name was Bodie Boatwright. And so Bodie Boatwright was what I considered the guy that taught me banking. Coates A. Mitchell taught me the old style of banking. I'd only been there, probably maybe 3 months, and I got promoted to operations officer of the bank. And you think, how in the world could that be? Well, I thought the same thing. But since I was one of only 6, it didn't make any difference. There was only 6 employees, and everybody had several jobs. And we failed to mention, we were $4.5 million in total assets. I'd been at the bank for 2 years and had learned what I felt like was a great education in banking. And I was, again, as I mentioned, operations officer of the bank. And one morning, Eddie McCoy brought into the bank a newspaper from the Gazette, and it had a full-page ad where IBM had put an ad in the paper, and it said, IBM introduces a new small computer geared for small businesses. Kind of sideline, I think Eddie McCoy thought, well, we're small enough to look at one. So he brought that paper to me, and he said, asked me what I thought about it. And I said, Eddie, I don't know anything about a computer, but what would you like? And he said, I want you to look into this, okay? I said, fine. So I called at Little Rock in
the video here. It's actually it's a history of my company, Computer Utilities of the Ozarks, or later on as CUO. But I want to make a dedication of this video and this podcast to Bob Wheeler and his recent passing. He was a great visionary and didn't get the credit at what he did with cable. When I was working with him early on, he was, he had little cards to represent, I guess, $3.50 a month cable billing, and it went to, these mom and pops went to $1 billion companies because of obviously all the broadband and all the things you see on cable. But his family was a pioneer in cable, and I'm talking about nationally in Arkansas. And it started in Harrison, and there was one down in Batesville, and they were one of the first to really get going there. And that was one of the things when he wanted to do an in-house system. He wanted to get away from Service Bureau because he felt like he wanted to control the information, and he was convinced that was the way to go. When I first saw it, I saw 3 elderly ladies that were pretty well convinced they knew how to run the system, and they really didn't need any of my help. So it was a fun thing to build that relationship and sitting in that office for many days, and how customer service was taught to me, and the artificial intelligence that the elderly ladies had was they knew everything right away, and I had to figure out how to build that into the system and make it easy to use. And get the information very speedily. And so you'll see that that was a big impact in what I did with my system and how I was able to get it to a lot of national locations and globally. And again, that was based on trust. You don't sell intangible softwares all over the nation and all over the world without a lot of people being convinced that they could trust what I was saying and what I brought to the table. So enjoy this history. It's done with Speechify, which has my voice, but it's tweaked with AI, which kind of keeps it going much better than what I'm doing here. But I think it's something you should enjoy from the standpoint of getting the history, but also how the new technology is starting to capture these kind of stories. CIA in Langley, Virginia, choosing James Bond over an offer to join NASA in Houston to put a man on the moon. Note use. Special thanks to Jason at Barnes & Noble for the graphics. This segment features Sidney Moncrief talking about his years at Arkansas and also his contact with Calipari, which has been zero.
Into is some of the things about what's going on with the Razorbacks. Have you had any conversation with Calipari, or is no conversation, or nobody?
I wrote him to buy books for the players, but I didn't hear back. But anybody from anyone put him on blast.
We're gonna get him off the bench.
Yeah, we need to get him off the bench in the game real quick on that one.
Well, what kind of advice would you give him if you ever talked to him? I mean, I
wouldn't give him any advice. No, he's coached long enough. He's a veteran. He knows the advice is get the best players.
Yeah,
guys that are coachable, and hopefully they stay healthy.
Well,
games.
And I know the history of when you came over, or stayed in state, and the triplets basically were three players in state. And I know the history of the Razorback football, and it's pretty well had to have a core of Arkansas players. I don't see any Arkansas players in this group, and I don't know if that's going to mean anything, or if it's just the sign of the times. Or
if they can play, it means a lot.
Yeah. So do you find something
like Nick Smith was Arkansas, Joe was Arkansas, Williams from Arkansas. We have some great players from the state of Arkansas, but it doesn't guarantee just because they're from the state.
Yeah, the AAU and the things, they kind of go out and play a lot of places.
Yeah, they do.
They do a lot of things different.
But it's always good. I guess we used to say, and this is going to be less of an issue moving forward with NIL and the transfer portal. It's no guarantee, even if you get a player from the state nowadays, that they're going to remain at Arkansas, because we've seen that this past year with the transfer portal. Guys want to play. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, they want to. They don't want to play. They don't want to sit on the bench.
They want to sit on the bench. Yeah, sometimes they're not good enough.
Yeah,
they need to sit
and
on the bench.
Yeah, and they have to go somewhere where they
have
can
to go somewhere so they can play. And I think that's an issue that will become more prevalent. I think Calipari has it right when he said that you can only expect a year from guys, pretty much. It's a year to year with your players. Every year you're going to have to start this process over again because players now have more freedom of movement if they're not playing as much as they think they should be.
Well, that's the other part. And I know we talked a little bit about this last year, was about the NIL and, player transfer. And you said at that time, I guess in your situation, you stayed 4 years. And I think we made the point about maybe one of your most important statistics was that you were the leading rebounder at Arkansas for all 4 years. I mean, freshman all the way through the senior, and you're 6'4", and you were pretty thin. I don't know what your weight was then, but
yeah, that was unusual because I was 6'4" and 100 pounds lighter than I am now, probably. And players just don't stay long enough to break that particular record.
Yeah.
You have to be there at least 3 years. I think there were some players that could have broken the rebound record, career rebound record.
They just didn't stay, but
they didn't stay. And same with scoring record. Of course, Todd Dave eventually broke that record, but it was going to be difficult for someone to break his record because they're not going to stay long enough to do that. So I think records will be kept longer because of that.
So back in your day, did you see much money being paid to players, or was it just something that's pretty?
Well, if you were at Kentucky, I saw guys from Kentucky.
Kentucky, yeah.
Kentucky, they got horse races, thoroughbred horse races, and pieces of horse farms, and all that kind of stuff. You know, they were notorious.
Our church pastor, Bryce, who was in attendance, along with his son Judah, was big Calipari fans.
You could be football, you couldn't be basketball.
Yeah, that was kind of the story. When I was over
programs like Speaking with an Intent. My latest podcast is different in the sense that I wanted to focus on how speech is impacted. There's programs like Speaking with an Intent to improve your speaking capabilities. So I turned to no better authority than Dave Woodman. You'll see that Dave is someone I had communicated with text or messaging, but had not actually spoke to, not had a conversation with, which is highly unusual. And in this case, this was his first podcast.
The local anchorman reigned supreme. When people believed everything they heard on TV. This was an age when only men were allowed to read the news. And in San Diego, one anchorman was more man than the rest. His name was Ron Burgundy. He was like a god walking amongst mere mortals. He had a voice that could make a wolverine purr. And suits so fine they made Sinatra look like a hobo. In other words, Ron Burgundy was the balls.
I've been doing a little bit of a docu-series, and I said, well, and this is it's taped, and I'll do a little bit of editing, but it'll be a lot just what we say and do, and that's kind of where we are. But you know, I'm just thrilled to meet you. You know, we've you know, when you see somebody on TV, you kind of think, well, I know that guy, and
well,
really,
I hope so. That's the way we wanted it to be when we first started out. Roy and Tom and I had a lot of meetings with our general manager before we ever went on the air, and one of the prime requisites was, hey, you guys have got to go through the camera. You got to go through the television receiver at home, and these people have got, your viewers have got to feel like they know you, and I think that's what we kind of hung our hat on for
I think
16 years. Thank you.
Yeah,
and you can put it
Thank you,
right there by Herb or behind your.
Yeah, we're pretty. But yeah, that was kind of.
Would you like some?
My dad started selling TVs in Harrison when there was just a snowy picture. Well, you might. Yeah, okay. Dog will be barking or being here. So that's the way these things are. But you really didn't get, you got a snowy signal from Memphis and Tulsa, and he was real good friends with Bob Wheeler, and I don't know how much you know about the cable up there, but Bob kind of got that going, and my dad was in TV, and we didn't want to put those 40, 50 foot antennas up, but people didn't want to just have Springfield, and know if you know anything about, do you know anything about Ron Burgundy? Back and forth, we really. And this lady, this is the famous lady. That's the famous Lydia. Because she's got.
I don't know why her was dressed up.
Well,
I sure didn't. I didn't even put on my fake mustache.
Well, I don't know. We're going to do a little Ron Burgundy. You know who Ron
Burgundy?
There
we go. There's okay. The burgundy jacket and the black mustache. This is Ron.
Come in here and let me show you the bathroom.
Yeah, we're going to. All right, so we're going to do a little podcast here. I'm glad to have Lyda, who I've known off and on for several years. I guess our first contact was back in Bellefonte, and you were at Bellefonte. And
That's right, I won't tell you what year I started.
I know, you're not going to say that. But Bellefonte, I guess, got to the point where you had just 8 grades, and you went all 8 grades there?
1 to 8.
1 to 8. Well, you went to Valley after that, right?
Yeah.
The boxing class that that was their special area of trying to improve. Others had a lot of different things, but not the things you think when you say Parkinson's. You think about Michael J. Fox. So there's a mental aspect of it. Some people get, and other people just blow past. And I don't want to get so far down the road that.
Well, I'd like to ask you something.
Well, you can ask me any question.
How long has Parkinson's been known, and why haven't they found some treatment for it that works if it's been going on for 50 years? The logic of it is that with all the technology and brains that we have all over the world, somebody knows what to do. Somebody knows the first cause of it. If we don't get to the cause, we're never going to be able to treat the effect.
Yeah, I interrupt our regular podcast for breaking news podcasts. Stay tuned.
A few moments ago, the Senate unanimously passed the National Plan to End Parkinson's Act, a bill that for the first time marshals agencies across the government to tackle this disease, this awful disease, in a comprehensive way. I thank Senators Murphy and Capito and everyone who championed this bill. Parkinson's is truly a terrible illness. It's taken an awful toll on my own family. My mom suffers from this disease. It's very hard on us. I know Parkinson's has affected the families of others in this chamber.
Rainmaker, the genesis of Finding Your Happy Place podcast, features Pablo Abdian and Sid Sreeve. Okay, my podcast today includes a rainmaker, Sid Sreeve in Phoenix, who grew up in Argentina, and I spent a lot of time in South America. We talked about all the things about South America, and we even talked about the Mountain Meadow Massacre since he is a Mormon. But we are the best of friends, and I would consider him one of my best friends and business associates, and so I wanted to include the...
Yeah, I'm here with Sid, and we're going to talk about some of our trips to South America and some of the things that we've done with our jobs, and also some of the things that we've developed with our families. And I thought maybe one of the things from a family standpoint came about a few years ago when we were in Costa Rica, and we were, you'd rent a car, and we was kind of going the back roads. We, of course, gone down there because of some opportunities with their cable TV software, and you knew the people there, and so it wasn't strange to us, and you had a lot of history of doing work down there. So I thought it was interesting that we came across this village over in Costa Rica, and there was a lot of kids out there playing, and we started having a discussion as, you know, can they be happy there or be as happy there as our kids are in the States? And I thought you had a lot of things that you thought about and you asked, and I thought maybe...
you said something to me that I've often thought about. We're coming along, we're going kind of through a little jungle area, a little road. We come into an open area, a little village.
And we did have these buzzards flying over us.
And as we were going down the little road, this little narrow road, there's a little power line here. There were a couple of buzzards flying. They'd fly ahead of us, and when we get up there, they kept going to the next one. Kind of like they were waiting for us to die or something. We weren't sure. But anyway, we came upon this village, and there's a bunch of little kids playing. And if I recall correctly, you had a grandson that was born fairly...
Well, it's the daughter.
Within that area.
It's the daughter, yeah.
And I asked Herb, I said, Herb, how come your grandson was born in the circumstances in which he was born? And then you got these little kids out here that just out here in this village running around. And you said something to me, you said, yeah, but look at them. Look how happy they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking, what is happiness? Is it having lots of things? Is it just being happy with your friends and that? So it kind of gave me a little pause to think a little bit. And some of my church activity, when I had to give a talk or a lesson or something, I used that example several times. And it was very interesting. Costa Rica.
And so that act has been activated, but it's also, there are plans in the future to bring it to the public in various ways. Now, the reason it's kind of motivated me for this podcast today was I was listening to a Q&A and it involved Leslie A. Chambers, President and CEO of American Parkinson.
Federal legislation dedicated to the prevention and cure of Parkinson's disease. Ted Thompson is the Senior Vice President of Public Policy at the Michael J. Fox Foundation, who led the advocacy team that was instrumental in getting this bill passed. Ted has more than 30 years of experience in public policy and government affairs, serving in several nonprofit leadership positions, and as well as serving on the staff for 2 members of Congress. Ted also helped create the Unified Parkinson's Advocacy Council, or UPAC, of which APDA is a member. So let's bring Ted to the screen to share the latest updates on the status of this new law and explain why it's so important. Welcome, Ted.
Thanks, Leslie. Great to be here, and I appreciate the partnership with APDA through the years. You've been an important partner in advocating around public policy issues, and you mentioned UPAC. You know, that's a broad-based effort to draw in as many Parkinson's and Parkinsonism's organizations as possible, so that on policy issues, we're speaking with one voice.
So how much more clinical can you get as far as having these people talk about ending Parkinson's or any kind of a plan? I'm sure that it just gets everybody excited. No? Hi, this is Herb Lair and Finding Your Happy Place. I'm talking with Jim Guy Tucker, former governor, taking a positive attitude as he battles several health issues, and we're at the Capitol Hotel. Through this tube, I think that's primarily because he had a transplant there with his liver, and then today after that I met and we discussed some of the things he has done in the past, but also briefly discussed his library and collection of his information while he was governor.
They use a little injection, looks like a great big shot.
Yeah.
And they just put air pressure on it and shove it on down into my belly. I don't feel it, but it's worked pretty well up to this point.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm going to get some of my weight back so I can get around a little better.
Right.
I was driving without any difficulties, but Betty convinced me to stop driving around town. Now she's got Parkinson's, so.
Yeah, I knew that. I knew you.
I argued with her about her Parkinson's. She argues with me about my Alzheimer's. And mine is not severe yet, nor is hers.
No.
But it's something we have to be sensitive to any place, but certainly in a city where the traffic is heavier. And that's just the way it is. But at any event, you and I were going to try and get together. Did I miss the appointment, or you want to set one?
Well, we were going to try to do it tomorrow morning because I was trying to go to
If I'll start at a breakfast place near the governor's mansion, we decided on the Capitol with an A.
Funny story, we had coffee in styrofoam cups from the previous place, and I said, Jim Guy, why don't you carry my styrofoam cup in here? I thought we would not be able to carry anything from the outside in there, and we got by with it. I don't know, he was pretty much recognized.
Well, I think what's interesting is that this idea of these grand old Southern hotels that come from a very old tradition really sort of are a dying breed, aren't they?
There's 2 principal reasons for that. The first one is that a hotel was designed
ordeal.
Okay, this is their area of seating preference, and this is where we ate breakfast from. All right, I think we're just going to get started, and we're just going to freewheel here. So it's Herb Lair and Governor Jim Guy Tucker, and we're doing a podcast from the Capitol Hotel. How are you today, Jim?
Better than I deserve, fortunately.
That's the way we always are.
I was amazed when I talked to you yesterday. I don't know, we don't usually have the video on there, but I noticed you were doing a feeding tube. What do you have to do now? I know you have Alzheimer's and you have some other. What are a list of things that you're doing now?
Well, I don't know that it's a big list. All of us take some pills for something, but I take a number of pills. I've had since I was in college and in the Marine Corps, a bunch of intestinal problems and surgery. I had a liver transplant Christmas Day of 1992.
Hi, I'm Herb Blair, and this podcast is Brett Favre Has Parkinson's with a Question. I came to that conclusion after looking to his eyes and his face. He had the appearance of seeing the Grim Reaper.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to do much. I want to talk to him about Parkinson's, but voice concussion things right now. So just want to mention it.
Yeah, get a picture because we're not seeing. He's trying to leave us.
Okay, I understand. I'll just mention that.
Just nice and quick. My dad had Parkinson's.
Yeah. Hey,
Hi.
I got delusional Parkinson's, and I
received like the Grim Reaper.
It's good to meet you. I just
Likewise.
What you're doing is great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
U.S. Marshal joins Fight Against Parkinson's podcast. I had a remembrance of the days when I began work after my stint at the University of Arkansas. I got a master's degree, and I went to Langley, Virginia, and the location that I began work at was similar in the sense that it had no signage, because I had began work at the CIA, and I was in Washington in the late 60s, and so it was kind of a fun thing to go out and visit today with the U.S. Marshal and his offices.
Well, it's good to be here at the U.S. Marshal office here in North Little Rock. I was able to find it through a point on the map, and Bob or Jeremy or Robert Emmets met me and got me in the door, and so we're going to start this and just more or less humanize some of the things that he does. I know that when we met a few weeks ago, we were having a social time there, and we were at the Walk-Ons, again, a place for people to meet, and it's like a sports bar for families, so it's a kind of a nice place, and we got to discussing some of our history, and amazingly, I was caught up on the fact that I knew, and I was really born about a half mile away from Beale Kidd, so that history of U.S. Marshal is something that I've had out there for a long time, so it wasn't anything new as far as the U.S. Marshal, but I think when I started talking to Jeremy and is that what you want to be called, Jeremy?
Jeremy, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad's Robert, so I go by Jeremy.
Oh, that's where it is. Okay, well, tell me a little bit about your history, and maybe
This podcast might be subtitled Mayors and Preachers and Salesmen in a Truck Getting Coffee. With apologies to Jerry Seinfeld. It was a fun conversation with Rob Kernodle. Again, he was in his truck out in Paducah, pretty much across state from where he lives, but I thought maybe we were going to use FaceTime off of Apple, but he doesn't have an iPhone, so we had to do that with using obviously the Facebook and Messenger option. The quality of the picture is not great, but I think the sound came through okay, and I know at least the audio version on Apple should be great, so no problem. Enjoy, and obviously give any
response that you have or any thoughts you have.
In front of my truck. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to set this up where I can make sure I get a good recording, because some of these things, I know that there's all kinds of weird stuff going on here. But you're in Paducah, boy. You're making you travel quite a bit then around the country.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah, I've got I'm gone at least 2 nights a week, and a lot of times 3 nights a week, sometimes 4 nights a week.
Amazing. Hi, this is Herb Lair, and I'm doing my podcast today from the Lucy Library on the 8th floor at UAMS, and it's again with Dr. Dahl, who is the chair, head of the neurology department. Just think of it as being Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld. Age versus youth.
This podcast, it's got a one-on-one with Dr. Dahl, and I appreciate you setting up the time to talk to me today. I was looking through the videos, and I want to kind of start this way because I think it brings the interest in some of the reasons we're doing this. But I saw that when you were, I guess, becoming a doctor or deciding to be a doctor, in maybe the 10th grade in high school, that you found that your father...
My name is Dr. Rohit Dahl. I'm one of the neurologists at UAMS. My reason for becoming a doctor and my reason for choosing my specialty both are tied to something that's quite personal to me. My dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease when I was in 10th grade, and so everything from there is moved based on finding new treatments, new cures for what my family has suffered with. I think of clinical care as a combination of managing lifestyle, trying to treat the underlying condition with what tools we have, and also looking at the future and trying to find new tools for treatment of condition. Our goal is often to bring people from a state where they're quite disabled to a good functional status. It's amazing what the amount of strength that people possess in the face of adversity. You ask them how they're doing, and a lot of times they'd smile and say, they're doing fine. And I think it does take a tremendous amount of human strength to go through and live with a degenerative illness, either live with it yourself or have a family member live with it. So it's always inspiring to work with the group of patients that I do because of all the courage that they show.
Tell me a little bit about your family and that experience there, because I really kind of want to get a little more information how that came about and your size of family and where you were, and so just kind of give us a little detail on that.
Thank you, Herb, for having me. So I grew up in a small town in northern India, and nobody else in my family has...
So you were born in India?
I was born in India and grew up in the state of Punjab. This is about 6 hours or so out from New Delhi, a train ride. And you'll see why that's important, and actually you'll see why that has colored some of the stuff that I'm trying to do here, including in Arkansas, at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. But I grew up in northern India, had a great family. My dad was a career banker. He was a bank manager in a nearby city when he started to notice issues for which I think it took about...
So the podcast was done in the cultural living room, and that was really great.
The podcast today is at the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts, and I have with me Dr. Victoria Ramirez.
That's right.
Hey, great.
So I was born in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
And I did go away to college, and I went to the University of Maryland and George Washington University, which of course are both in the Washington, D.C. area.
Sure.
And, I went there because initially I was studying art history, But what I found is I wanted to work in museums.
Okay.
And what better place to work in museums than Washington, D.C.?
Right.
Where you have all those museums in such a small geographic area.
Yeah.
And so my very first museum that I worked at was the Smithsonian.
Wow.
And I fell in love with the field from the very beginning. But to give you a little more information about me, I do go back to Cleveland regularly to visit my mother. And my mother has Parkinson's.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting.
She was diagnosed about 10 years ago. And about 4 years ago, we lost my father.
Okay.
So she lives on her own. And I have been watching the progression of PD in her. And we see each other regularly. But I understand completely about having that cognitive awareness, but it could be spatial awareness that is challenging. For my mother, it's speech sometimes.
Right.
For my mother, it's she's lost the ability to use her handwriting like she used to.
Yeah, you see that a lot.
Yeah. But she regularly takes yoga and strength training classes at a place that's designed for people with PD.
Okay.
And it's really taught her how to navigate the world with this disease. And she is a member of the Cleveland Museum of Art.
Okay.
And she goes there regularly with her friends and with me when I'm in town. And it's really a delight to see her socializing and connecting with other people and seeing new things that she encounters when she goes to the museum, because that's what keeps her mind going. And so I say all of that because I'm really delighted to meet you.
Well,
and I'm glad you're here.
I'm delighted to meet you, and that's something that I really wanted to bring out when I do. I find out that a lot of people have friends or family, and it's always a surprise. And I think that's the thing I was trying to develop, and I just couldn't believe that we. I guess we had that. Of course, Erica Dunn is doing quite a bit of work in the area of philanthropy, and so she's working with that, and she was there, and I got to see several different booths and talk to people, and a lot of things of interest there. Some of them are trials that I'm looking at as potential that I might be involved in, and then there's other things that I was looking there, but they had a great, hors d'oeuvres and a lot of things there, and a lot of chance to meet people. I was laughing. It seems like whenever you're at over there at the medical center there, and of course we was up on the 12th floor there, you're always hearing stories about people, and I was just overhearing one, and I kind of caught my interest because it was a friend of mine that I've gotten to know real well at church, and it was Dr. Kent, and they were talking about how tough he was at times on people. I guess, I don't know whether it's young doctors or people he was observing and evaluating, and he was talking about, he just kind of was putting pressure on this person and kept on and on. And he just, he had a way of asking questions. I've seen that in class in church. He has a way of putting the questions together, and they're tough to answer sometimes, but he does it that way. But they were talking about that it just went on, and finally the person that was, the doctor that was there that he was observing said, "Well, I'm doing the best I can." And then they laughed and said, Kent Westbrook, he said, "Well, that's what I'm afraid of." And so That's kind of a funny way to put it, but that's what happens. But as I mentioned, I ran into a lot of different people, people with Parkinson's and others, family members and people.
Now we transition to the Don Reynolds Center on Aging, and you'll see a statue as you enter the building there. And if you get there and you read a little bit, you'll see that he was involved in advertising and cable TV. That was my connection with him and Don Ray Media. But as you see, we're in a basement where the menu is put together, and I had turkey, shrimp, zucchini, and you know, as you can think about dumplings, I don't normally think of this as being my favorite, but as you can see, we were given a menu, and we were given all these items that Episcopal Church. I will show you some of my cards that I created using some of the art that had been used in our previous efforts, and some are mine, some are others. But you get a feel for what's going on. Today, from WKYC Studios in Cleveland, Ohio.
I wanted to do one with maybe a younger generation. I know my demographics, surprisingly, is between 18 and 54, and that's because a lot of people have, they're digitally trained or got a lot of experience in that, and the older people, not so. We have issues there with the fact that, a lot of people who have Parkinson's are kind of at an older age, but still you got the younger people who experience that either with friends or family, and so I always like to bring those into the loop. You got a resemblance to someone, and have you ever realized that?
Who do you think?
Well, I think it's Billie English, Billie
Eilish?
Eilish, yeah.
Oh, I love her. Beautiful voice.
Well, I thought that's, I thought when I listened to the song, I said, boy, that you have got that. And I don't know, how much you even thought about it or anybody else has said that, but I kind of like music, and I kind of like listening to shows and shows like that. But interesting, when I heard that, and I was kind of surprised. Yeah, that was one of the things I picked up on. And saying, do you do much of that now, or
much singing?
Yeah, or just.
I do some. I feel like I don't have as much time on my hands as I did. I wrote a lot of songs in college.
In previewing my next podcast, I wanted to look at all the countries myself and employees went to without a single arrest or any kind of charges for spying or taking drugs. But I think that the other thing is that once you've been identified as having Parkinson's, and then they see things that may be delusional in your life of today, they say, did this really happen? So I think it's good to go back at this point and get with Jamie McIntyre, who was an unusual choice for the head of development, and now is an executive with Jack Henry, a public banking software company in Monett, Missouri, and reflect on our time together and also what was accomplished, because it's pretty unusual what happened and how it happened and maybe why it happened. But it just seemed to be in the 1990s there was a perfect storm that we were able to take advantage of by having a product that came out on a PC or desktop that nobody else had, to take it globally and work with some of the bigger companies throughout the world. Hi, Herb Layer. This podcast is Unlikely Players Create the Perfect Storm podcast.
It was kind of a perfect storm in a sense, because we had a guy named Lynn Armstrong. He had been in previously. I mean, we had done the Series 1 stuff, and we had done work with Prompt, and we'd had some things with the EDX, and we were kind of getting into that late stage of the Series 1 Mini and going over to the PC, and we were doing an emulation to start with, which was kind of a way to make DOS be a Windows or interactive or multitasking. So we were using that to turn on and off converters, but we had got the kind of concept together, but we really hadn't gotten it down to being on a PC or the desktop, which really, with the 90s, and I'm talking about 1990s, it was just all the things that happened globally was kind of crazy, and we were right in the middle of that. So any thoughts about when you came in and what you saw that needed to be done, and how you kind of approached that? Because you're kind of a new guy on the block, you're a young guy,
yeah.
and you're kind of facing a lot of things that, well, in technology, you're always doing that, but you're always appreciated for what you do and what you accomplish, and not so much your history. And that, that was the thing I had to deal with a lot of times with people was that factor. So what were your thoughts there of coming on board at that time?
So generally, I was kind of like I guess at that time, we have a word for developers in that stage. We call them cowboys, right?
Yeah.
So they basically sit down and they just write out code and do whatever they like, and they don't think a whole lot about it, and they just brute force their method through, and they make a lot of progress, but a lot of times it isn't as robust as it needs to be, right? So they're usually self-taught too. So that was basically me at that time. I came in, I believe Ray Gregory brought me in. I don't remember, how long he was there.
So as we get into 2025, I wanted to reflect back on the computer utilities, and possibly I can have a podcast with Paul Case and talk about some of the things we did, and some of the things he's very much into, things about life and living and social information. But here we are. We've had this period of time over many years. We never sued anyone. We never had a lawsuit against anyone, and we never had one from a customer against us. So along with all the facts that we had with people traveling to these countries, which if you watch the podcast with Jamie, you'll see that we went to some very interesting places, from Bahrain to places that you might not expect to go to, and again, we could go to Ukraine, Russia, and some pretty dangerous spots. And then we also end up going to some other spots like Indonesia, and I went to China, and I was on TV there, and we just had a wide range of activities and exposure that it was pretty amazing. Maybe when you hear people talking today with that kind of a situation, that they didn't have any lawsuits or no problems. In 2025, the national plan to end Parkinson's Act will be in force. We have a great audience, and we have a great message and a way to save a lot of money, and we hope that we can get the sponsors and advertisers, so I look forward to hearing from you.